Hello and welcome back to the Wednesday Club.
Hi.
This is our biggest, most exciting club ever, I think, because we've managed to acquire a few new members. I don't know if we told you you're officially conscripted. Yay!
Oh,
Right. Yeah. You have to fight with us when the Great War comes.
But you get a sticker.
Mackie and Taliesin Jaffe are back from the desert. We've missed you very much.
Life-changing.
It was fabulous.
As usual.
Yeah.
My name is Amy Dallen, and I would just like to go ahead and introduce our guests. These are, can I just call you the young animals?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, the young animals are here. Starting with our favorite recurring show guest that we trick into being on here as often as possible.
Who I barge onto the show whenever I feel like it. Kind of more like, but hi, Jody Houser, y'all know me.
Though you have called yourself the arch nemesis.
No, Taliesin called me that.
Did you?
I
But
dubbed her the arch nemesis.
she acquiesced
Yeah,
to
I
the
embraced.
title.
I embraced it.
Yeah, no, she just.
You've made a dangerous enemy.
I'm aware.
I don't know why you did that.
I like to be measured by my enemies, and so I had to up the ante.
That's a good quote, sir.
Like,
Young Animal is an imprint from DC Comics, curated by this gentleman here, and Jody writes Mother Panic for that imprint,
there we are.
and is the first of our guests. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for anyone?
Yeah, I'm Gerard Way. I curate Young Animal and I write Doom Patrol.
Oh, man.
Waha.
Okay. And next we have. Oh no, I know your name. Jon Rivera writes Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye, along with Gerard.
We were giving you the opportunity to say hello to everybody.
I was like whispering things. It's my name.
Are you just going to whisper the entire show?
Thinking about Axl Rose,
I am.
aren't you?
Yeah, I'm done for the next half an hour. I'm thinking about
This
it.
cover of Sympathy for the Devil is just going to haunt us.
Yes, Jon Rivera. I write Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye.
One of the great titles of the
That's
new era.
honest, man.
It's
I can't
amazing.
take credit for that. I was the first fan of that title of that
such
book.
a
He
good
told me, and I was like,
title.
oh, whatever it is, I'm writing it. I'm doing it.
When you hear the title, you're just like, well, I have to read it. What does this even mean? Like, that's the title of this?
When I heard the title, I was like, can I write that one?
And finally, rounding out our guest today.
Hi, I'm Cecil Castellucci, and I write Shade the Changing Girl.
Anyone who has been watching Roundtable, our alpha exclusive interview show, has already grown to know and love Cecil because she, along with Jody, were on several of those. I'm just assuming they love you already.
I hope so. now I'm gonna be thinking about that.
Aww. You're deeply loved. Tweet at Jody and tell her that she's amazing.
Yes.
We are very, very excited to have all of you here to talk about your books today. I guess you constitute nearly all of the Young Animal writers, right? Because one of the Allreds would count for Bug now.
Right. Lee Allred, who's writing Bug, and that's all that's out yet.
Yeah.
We're working on some other ones, but there are some new young animal writers right now, but yeah, I can't say who those people
Secret
are.
We're
Animals.
like the first wave.
Yeah, we're wave one. Yes,
We're the original.
original.
Reinforcements are coming.
Starter pack.
Starter pack.
So we're going to talk about all of your books, about what Young Animal is, about what we're excited about and where it's going from here. And we're going to take some of your questions. I think
Yes.
Matt is going to be looking at
Oh, I'm
socials.
looking at them right now. I'm looking at your questions, everybody.
Who are you people? How did you survive the desert for a week? What's going on? What's a comic
Actually,
book?
barely anyone has said anything about Burning Man. They're just
That's
saying
good.
they're
That's
saying
good.
Might
welcome
be
back.
slightly
The less-
distracted with our
the
best
less they know, the
possible.
better.
Though I will say, Queen Anita said Gerard Way is in My Chemical Romance.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
You heard it here first.
I think there's a huge chunk, honestly, I think there's a huge chunk of our audience who knows what that is and what that means because we sent them to Wicked and Divine at this point and just went into the
Wicked Divine,
metadata.
Umbrella Cafe, but
I love it.
so
But yeah.
we're going to get into all of that. We do have one off the top. We have a very special Wednesday Club announcement that we don't want to forget.
Thing that we have to take out, which is that we can officially announce because we sadly couldn't announce it at Gen Con or in the other or sooner. We thought it would be fun to do it here.
I'm not sad.
I'm not sad. I'm
excited.
happy to do it here. Is that we have the cover art for the new Critical Role Vox Machina Origins 6-issue miniseries, which is officially being published by Dark Horse. And the first issue is coming out September 20th. Oh my God! And we're going to show you. Look at that cover.
Well,
oh
bam.
wow!
That's awesome.
With Matt Mercer and Matthew Colville and Olivia Sampson and Chris Northrup, who've all worked super hard, and it's looking really good. It'll be available digitally on the 20th, and we're going to have like the anthology collected sometime in spring 2018.
So 6 digital issues monthly, starting in 2 weeks, and then a physical collection for that bookstore life
And
this spring.
everywhere where digital things are found, Kindle, Apple, et cetera, Comixology. It's going to be a lot of fun, and oh my God, we have a comic
some
book.
more of the preview images. Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that! Look at that!
Nice.
Pretty.
Yeah, it's just the twins and Kiki looking great. So we're very.
For the sake of our guests, Taliesin
great.
here plays a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. And as
noticed.
and Critical Role is making the leap to the printed page in narrative format with this comic book series, which I'm
story
super
and
excited.
dialogue and
The metaphorical printed page at first, I guess.
and
That
art.
fell apart midway
digital,
through.
the
It's
digital
digital.
page.
It's going to be phenomenal. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm quite pleased. I had very little to do with it, to be fair. But thank you. Yeah, no, I'm taking your pride.
It's possible that you will be able to hit a pre-order link on Comixology for this. I don't know when exactly that will go live, but it's certainly in 2 weeks. You can find it on most digital distribution platforms. More info will be available.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes. So
You're a comic book person.
I am a comic book person now. I tried really hard. Many years ago, I tried to get hired by DC, and they were not amused or impressed by anything I had to offer.
Not yet.
Not yet. That's life is short, but it was definitely a oh well okay.
Speaking of how you managed to sneak your way into being a comic book person,
Yes.
I would love to ask briefly, and I guess I'll leave this up to you. Would you like to talk about your books first, or talk a little bit about getting into comics first?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever you guys feel comfortable
What do you
with.
guys want to hear?
Yeah, what do you guys want to
Let's talk about neither one of those things.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, I mean, like,
Let's talk about pirates, guys. Who's your favorite pirate?
Finally.
I've got a little Gerard story that I want to tell anyway, because I was it was like 2007 when Umbrella. I'm a big Umbrella Academy fan, and I became an
Talked about it on the show.
Umbrella
For those
Academy
of you
fan.
who don't know, it's a wonderful miniseries published by Dark Horse that Gerard Way that brought him to a lot of our attention as a writer for
Thank
the first
you.
time.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. That's right. We have to Wednesday Club this. I've never Wednesday Club this story, and I want to say that like immediately, my first reaction to buying it was purely sarcastic and ironic, which was this was the. Oh God, I guess I'm going to read this thing that some musician asshole decided he can write a comic book, and like as snarky and bullshit as you could possibly imagine. You know, I'm sure. And I picked it up, and the book genuinely changed my life. And even the themes in that book were almost seemed to be designed. And I don't know if you made this intentionally a book about how you relate to the world and like the irony of the sort of the irony and sarcasm of some of the characters and how they deal with their past and the way that they were raised. But I made a solemn promise to myself, because I actually walked away going, I almost denied myself this insane book because I was felt like it would be fun to be an asshole.
Right.
And that was when I finally swore off ever having a fucking opinion about anything I hadn't read before. Like that was the end of it, because that book, and then immediately the Killjoys,
yeah.
it's just, those books have just really brought a lot of love to my life,
I'm
and I
very
just wanted to
glad.
say thank you. And then
Yeah,
your
you're
music,
welcome.
which I got into afterwards.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I'm meeting more people that have gotten into the music after, or just not at all, and they're just into the comics,
Oh,
and that's
I'm
cool,
into
too.
it all.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm really into it all, and I was so excited to hear you were taking Doom Patrol, because that's a book that's so close to my heart. and
Yeah,
has
me too.
Such a, I mean.
So let's just start
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Why Doom Patrol?
It just, it was the first time I was ever exposed to group therapy was in the pages of a comic, or therapy in general. I had no idea what therapy was, and then I'm seeing this superhero team in group therapy, and it always seemed to be about, again, like where you fit in the world, like what's your, what's your place in the world? Like, what are you supposed to be doing? Yeah, it was just, it dealt with a lot of issues that I felt were just really important, and I loved the characters, and there was nothing mainstream about them.
No.
At all. So they were, there was a few things that pulled me out of superhero comics, but they were like the main gateway to leading me into all different kinds of things that I would end up loving,
Because you grew up reading comics.
I did, yeah. I did grow up reading comics. I got published when I was 15. I wrote a comic. And then, yeah, I did, yeah. And then called On Raven's Wings. And then I went to art school. I used that to get into art school. And then after that, I was doing toy design. And then the band happened. And then I was like, all right, cool, I'll use this as a backdoor to get into comics again.
So the secret to getting into comics is having like a hit band and tour the world a few times. And
jokingly, that's what I told a classroom of SVA students. Yeah, just have to figure out. Yeah. No, I saw it. Yeah.
I'm gonna go start a punk band. BRB.
But
Which is the thing that I do want to jump on, because I was doing the math outside and I realized rock star, beautiful singing voice, and I was checking with Jon, also band.
yeah, I did bands in like high school and some college. Yeah, we
What's
played
the
a couple.
music comics connection?
I think it's just wanting to tell stories any way you can. And I think when you're a kid, it's like, what are the two things you can do? You can kind of draw and write comics.
Right.
You could, if maybe you're, at the time, like in the late 90s and stuff, like not everyone had a like HD camera in their pocket. Yeah. So like if you maybe had access to like a cam or something, you can make a film. Mm-hmm. But music's another way to tell stories. And like, and our band, that's the thing, I handled a lot of like visual stuff. I got super into like designing the, you know, like the covers, and we did like fake Jack Chick comics, like that we passed out at shows, talking about how we were like the only path to salvation, and so it was fun. It was cool. So I got to like incorporate all the stuff that I loved into that anyway. So yeah, I think when you're younger, it's just, you know, you either make a movie, you make a comic, or you make a song, and that's, you know, that's how you find, you know, that's how you express yourself at that time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gerard and I had talked about once, like, about how there's something about writing comics, because you have this collaboration with people who, like, they each have their skill that they're good at, like the letterer, the colorist, the inker, the writer. And it's the same thing with a band. You've got, everybody's got their different instrument that they're playing, and you have to figure out how to work together, because it's a real collaborative thing. Like, the closest thing that I've ever felt creatively have that same spirit of being in a band is writing a comic book.
Yeah.
Like, and that's different than a film, because film is like, there's a lot more sort of moving pieces.
Right.
But you know, I think the thing about being in a band is that it feels really intimate and collaborative, and you're telling a story, and it's the same thing with a comic book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were a theater kid, so you took the playwright route.
Yeah, I actually did do playwriting in high school and then in grad school, so. Yeah, it's like nerd band, I guess. I don't know.
I feel you on that one.
Actual band might also be nerd band.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Mr. Way, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol or the 60s Doom Patrol? Like, which one was like the hook for you?
Well, the way in was through Grant and Richard Case's run. That was the way in. And then, because, you know, like the old Doom Patrol at the time wasn't even, you know, in the 80s, it wasn't really accessible to someone that was like 15 and didn't have money. So I read the Grant run, and then I read some of Rachel's run, and then I ended up eventually reading the Silver Age stuff. And a lot of the Silver Age stuff kind of informed where I would take Umbrella Academy in some ways.
I get that.
Because of that kind of like, you know, kind of like an alternate kind of Silver Age type scenario. But Grant's was also influential on Umbrella Academy as well, and obviously Watchmen, and, you know, there was a lot of great comics that affected me when I was like 15, 13, you know.
I think we popped the. So Zach, by the way, Chief, is our absolute Johnny on the spot anytime we reference something. I think we popped a picture. I love it. I love that, like, most shows you can't just be like, look up the Arnold Drake stuff, and they're like, bam. But I think we popped a picture of the Morrison Omnibus in there as well, which is something we've talked about on the show a lot before, that was a very influential from the Vertigo line of comics from the late 80s, early 90s that kind of changed comics for a lot of folks. So I'd love to talk.
In therapy.
Yeah. A little bit about, thanks, about what Young Animal is. So an imprint is kind of like a sub-publisher. Mm-hmm. How would we describe it?
Yeah. Sometimes if people, they don't read, like, I know they don't read comics, I'll say, like, it's like, you know, like there'll be like a sub-label.
Right.
Like a
record label.
Yeah, like a record label. Same thing.
Yeah.
So how did this one come about?
It came about because I really wanted to write Doom Patrol, and I felt like it was going to be really like all alone on its own. And I don't know, I feel like Doom Patrol makes a little more sense in the context of the whole line. I think
it's like a meta narrative that you can't. Being weird by yourself is less good than being weird with other people.
Yeah, you've nailed it. Yeah, that is exactly what it is. Being weird with a group of people is so much cooler than being weird on your own.
There really feels to be a lot of meta narrative to this too. Like not since the early days of Vertigo.
Right now.
Like Vertigo had a really strong meta narrative in the beginning of that very 80s pop vibe of just like the whole underground, the whole notion of this underground vein of supernaturalism and energy that kind of created that early run of Vertigo. But this feels different, and I haven't quite put my finger on what it is about this, other than that all these characters have weird psychological trauma, which is like the one, like everyone's dealing with a weird personal problem.
Yeah,
which
everybody
I'm really
is.
digging.
Yeah, all throughout, and in very human ways, despite the fact that some of them aren't human at all. Like, but yeah, they are dealing with some sort of trauma from the past and problems of their own, issues of their own. Yeah.
Is that by design, or is that sort of like, hey, that's an awesome coincidence and we can play with that?
I mean, it's by design. I feel like it's just kind of what was in my head, and then I think the more I talked and found creators that we all felt very like-minded, I felt like it was in everyone's head, and we kind of all dreamed these things up together and figured out what they could be, and they all seemed like they wanted to be that,
I think we're like fans of flawed heroes, and that gets bandied about a lot. Like, oh, this character has like flaws, but they never really seem like flaws. Like I think heroes that aren't necessarily going to save the day. They'll try, but they might not succeed. And there's always like a cool feeling. I mean, even as a kid growing up watching like Indiana Jones, it's like, or even like Die Hard, you're like, I don't know if this guy's gonna make it, and that's a cool feeling that later in subsequent sequels and stuff kind of goes away when they become superheroes and can literally take anything.
There's a sequence in Cave Carson that really I don't want to give it away. Normally we're okay with spoilers on but like
I've been way too secretive about this book. I never want to spoil anything. I feel bad.
There's the phone call. The phone call breaks my The phone call is the moment that I'm like, everything's over and everything's bad.
Yeah.
That broke my heart.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love that part. I love that part.
You will all know what I'm talking about when you get to that issue of like,
issue 5, I think. It's like right before the end of the first arc, and he makes a desperate plea to the type of person that you would call in the situation he's in.
It's the desperate scream to the heavens of, please, I need an adult.
Yeah, totally.
No adult is coming. It's great.
Yeah.
And then,
You didn't want the books to be alone.
Yeah.
And somehow we got here. What's the middle step? How'd you find all these folks?
Well, we started, to round back just a little bit. I got to know Shelly Bond, and we always talked about doing something at Vertigo. As Shelly was at Vertigo forever, and
The home of many of the books we're talking about in the late 80s, early 90s sort of comic book renaissance that changed most of our lives.
So she edited. She edited a lot of books in that era, and exactly what we're talking about. So we'd always stay in touch about Doom Patrol, though, and this is before the imprint or whatever. And then so years would kind of go by, and it was just never the right time. And then I finished touring on a solo record, like I'd finished all the touring, and I said to myself, like, I really want to try something different now, just because I had so much fun on the solo tour. It was a really nice, kind of almost relaxing type of thing. And we didn't work too overly hard. I just kind of went out, then I would come home for a bit. Anyway, so then I was gearing up to appear at a convention in Brazil with Gabriel Ba, who draws the Umbrella Academy, and then Dan DiDio and Jim Lee were also on that trip. And we kind of, and I've been friends with Jim for years since the band, and I've met Dan probably like 8 years ago, and we hit it off, and I love those guys. So we got to talking, and I think it was Jim at first who might have said the word imprint, and then just kind of dreamed it up, and they said, who do you want to work with? I said Shelly Bond, and then Shelly's assistant, Molly Mahan, became an editor for Young Animal, and then Jamie Rich eventually. And then, so Shelly and Molly and we would just kind of, we'd look at samples, but we were kind of looking for a very specific thing. Somebody's writing just had to be different. It just had to have this kind of special X factor quality to it that made it special and different and unique. And then we all met in person. Like Jon, obviously I know from before we met in art school, but meeting them was just awesome. And it clicked when I read each of their work. It was just, and that's how it's been with every other young animal writer or creator that's come in, and they're all just really also cool people, which is a bonus.
How did the artist pairings come about? I know that, for instance, like Mother Panic, you were already working with Tommy Lee Edwards, right? When you came in and helped shape it together?
Tommy came into the project with me. So it was already this kind of thing where he had, I think even before Jody's involvement, he had started designing the character. And there was,
because you had designs to show me when we first met.
Right. But then we needed a writer. Like, we needed somebody to, like, flesh this character out. And Jody came in and co-created the character with us and fleshed this out. And I think, Mother Panic is something that you're always going to see Jody as being the core writer of. But I think at times we're going to see maybe I'll pop and do an issue or something like that, just because it's a character that we all created and want to be a part of their life,
So let's talk about who's Mother Panic?
So Mother Panic is a brand new vigilante in Gotham, which is a city well known for its many, many, many vigilantes.
For its completely calm and normal and safe life.
Yes. And she, during the day, she's kind of like the trashy celebutante who's always rumored to be in rehab and will punch a paparazzi in the face if like she feels like it. And then at night, she's putting on this crazy high-tech costume and going out and trying to find the people behind this boarding school she went to as a kid called Gather House. There was like this bizarre experimental place with these people who I don't think we've really, no, we sort of hinted at their name.
Right.
Secrets?
Yeah, but they're basically experimenting on kids and trying to get a foothold into the power structure of Gotham. So she's actually cybernetically, it's Mother Panic has a cybernetic everything, except eyes, I think. So she's kind of super strong, like.
That's a cybernetic everything will be the next volume.
Gotta see where this goes. Year 4. It's just
Right. Mother Panic has organic eyes.
Yeah, and she's also like the only person in Gotham who isn't an orphan because her mother is a big part of her life and her mother's not really well. So she's a big part of her life is trying to take care of her mother, and that's sort of where you get to see her softer side and the potential to be a hero character, even if she's kind of. She's not a role model. I remember like when there were some of the reviews for the first issue came out, they're like, she's not very likable, and I'm like, congratulations, you got the point.
It's very play it by ear Batman is the vibe I get. It's the Batman without a plan. It's just this sort of violent mess. It's like all of the formula came together for the Gotham Vigilante just sort of by accident, and is just barely holding together through.
Yeah, it feels like it could fall apart
through will
any
alone.
second.
Yeah, that like everything could just go to shit at any second in the book.
There's also like
yeah.
and there's very much an element of like, is she good? Like, I mean, she's doing good things, but like, I think she's the hero, but maybe she's not. Like,
100% stop that guy from acting out the plan that she maybe also had in that arc with the very nice face.
I mean, the thing is, it's like she doesn't kill anyone, but that's not actually her choice. She did try to kill someone, and just because of a traumatic experience in her childhood, she couldn't bring herself to do it. So she's sort of like erring toward the side of a hero more by default than anything else in a way.
I love how you show that. Like, every time there's a chance that she could kill someone, like, you see the deer in the crosshairs, and you're like, oh no, she won't be able to do it. Oh, like, that's a really smart way to show that trauma and how it's like constantly repeated. I actually really like that a lot. I was like, I'm friends with this lady.
And I'll say I have a theory on Young Animal that I want to throw in. This may just be me projecting, but because it's 60s psychedelic pop is kind of my jam. Mm-hmm. I get a real 60s psychedelic pop vein through everything of just a little bit of Prisoner, just a little bit of Jodorowsky, just a little bit of the Monkeys, just a little bit of like all the there's a real, she feels like a character that could have shown up in The Prisoner as like very like this sort of the dark reflection of attempts at control and attempts at submission gone horribly awry. But
So why a Gotham book?
That's
Why
a
Gotham?
question.
It felt like super interesting to do one. It was like basically we were kind of almost testing the limits of, can we do a character in Gotham and make it, are they in continuity? It's like, well, they're in Gotham, so we're we're just kind of doing our thing with Mother Panic and not really thinking about the details of that sort of stuff. I kind of feel as the longer the comics go on, maybe that stuff is less important. You just want to. I mean, even feels like they're doing that a little bit with movies, where you'll have like a Batman movie, but then you'll probably have like an alternate Batman movie in 3 years.
And maybe like 4 Joker movies.
And like, yeah, I was just reading something about like an additional Joker movie that has nothing. It's like a different Joker. So I think you're gonna start to see just like every version of everything right
Every
now.
movie will be a Joker.
Yeah, every movie.
Apparently, DiCaprio is rumored to play.
That's what I hear. That's the
like
word.
Neo, or would it be Neo Joker? No, it wouldn't be Neo. Proto Joker. Thank you.
Joker.
Perhaps
Are
the
they
real
really
Joker movie
going
was
to call him
inside as a
Proto
whole.
Joker? Because I'm signed up. He calls himself Proto Joker. So good, Oscar Award winner.
So I think, I think really, like,
Proto Joker.
I think really like tightly knit continuities. I don't think there are things that really last. I think they're always getting changed and altered and broken and fixed and all things like that. And I think that's just because there's a lot of different stories people want to tell, and some of those stories have endings, and they lead you to dead ends if you keep going down them. And writers can't do that. They can't tread the same territory. If they've killed a character and they really need the character, they just make them come back. I mean, it just feels like it's easy breezy.
But you're certainly taking. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, it also feels like sometimes when you have like so many things that are interconnected, then you kind of screw yourself as like you can't tell a story anymore because you're bound by all of these other things that don't have anything to do with it. And like what I like about the way that we're in continuity or not is that we kind of just sort of can pick and choose what we want to be there or not to be there, and so it's like we have this sort of common knowledge of like, oh yeah, maybe that thing exists, but maybe it's not really, it's not really like, it doesn't have to be so stuffed with everything.
Right.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, and I feel like at the end of the day, I feel like the good stuff counts. Like, what counts? It's like, well, what was your favorite story? And that's what really happened. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about all that stuff. So
I think with the books, when we write them, I try to write them just assuming that the readers have not read a lot of DC comics. I just like to come from that, that viewpoint.
Because Cave sort of lays everything out for you, where Doom Patrol sort of throws you in with a lot of the characters that you might remember, and they. I think they both stand on their own very well, but they feel like two different approaches.
they are two different approaches, for sure.
Yeah, I always liked the idea behind like the All-Star stuff, like especially All-Star Superman, where it was like, you know what, if you've seen a Superman cartoon or a movie or just through cultural osmosis, like you can understand this book. It'll have Lex Luthor. It'll have all the things that you'd want to read in a Superman comic, and I like that approach to it. It makes it accessible.
Yeah, I feel like the familiar settings and familiar characters allow you to do a lot of shorthand for certain things where you don't necessarily want to do like the whole origin of how things got to be a certain way for the 15 millionth time.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like there's a guy named Batman in the city. There you go.
Yeah, no, I think chronology was kind of for me is like the big problem I have with I love continuity. I think it's such a neat trick, but definitely it's easier to deal with continuity if we can just agree not everything is happening at once.
Right.
And there's just a Gotham City, and it's just the Gotham City, and whatever is happening in Batman doesn't have to necessarily interact with what you're doing.
But there can still be a Batman.
But there's a Batman in Gotham City, and it just doesn't matter that like the two books are coming out at the same time.
You don't need to know what he's doing because you know what he means.
Yeah, exactly.
And what was fun about the book was that like Mother Panic is like she's more or less just kind of like an annoying blip on Batman's radar at this point.
What is she doing?
Like you see like one page with him in the Batcave, and you're just like, what is she doing? Just watch her, whatever. And Batwoman like tries to kick her ass once, and like it's like, oh cool, there she is. She's in Gotham. That's awesome.
It's like as long as she's not murdering people and causing too much, whatever.
Yeah,
we have bigger problems.
There was that
We have
one line
15
where it's like,
million
we're
Jokers.
watching you. We knew we were going to take care of it. And it's like, oh, that's all right, cool. Like, that's what Batman does with everybody. Great. Yeah, I love that. I thought it was great.
Oh, there's so much. I don't even know where to, there's just so.
So you're written with characters that a lot of people, you're making up new ones and combining them with ones people might recognize. But I am curious, because Cave Carson, these are real characters, but you have a very different burden in sort of like, have you met a lot of people who are like, I love Cave Carson the most?
Maybe maybe at some shows. I think when we did North Carolina, one or two people came over and they said that they liked Cave Carson from his original.
First of all, that's amazing.
So,
Never heard of Cave Carson before this.
I had never heard of him. I had never heard of Cave Carson full disclosure, I'd never heard of Cave Carson. You said the name, and I was like started laughing because I love that kind of stuff. Like,
well, I found him in a Dan DiDio gave me an encyclopedia when.
That was the last. That was what they did last week on Wednesday.
Did you guys go into the encyclopedia? It's like his entries like
so
that
good.
big.
so good.
I was like, this is the
That's how I found Doom
guy.
Patrol back in the day, was a DC Who's Who. That crazy,
Yeah, the Who's
that
Who.
crazy Jane picture, I'm like, who is this?
So after I
Holy
went
shit.
through the encyclopedia, I immediately, because I used to have a lot of those Who's Who's, I lost them over the years, so I immediately ordered a full set. So then I had that, and then I went through all those. So, but I saw Cave in the encyclopedia, and I said, this is the guy.
What was the entry that
His
like
name was
grabbed?
Cave Carson. That was
That was enough. You're like alliterative name.
And
Cave.
then, it's really his entry. Like, I felt like there was something amazing just sitting there. It's like, his name is Cave Carson. And then it talks about what he's good at. And it's like, yeah, he's pretty good at hand-to-hand.
Yeah, like adventure guy stuff.
Geologist, and he
yeah.
has a cybernetic eye. And that's like it. That's all it's
And then they throw the
special about it.
cybernetic eye thing. What we saw was they were just like, oh, and he has a cybernetic eye. And we were like, what does he use that for? Because he's a spelunker. So Cave Carson, the original idea is Cave Carson's a spelunker, and him and his group, his team would like go on adventures under the earth. And this was like the late '60s, kind of the height of like adventure comics, like Challenges of the Unknown, it's science. Let's go to
That's how
space.
Taliesin pitched it to me. He's like, you're gonna love it. It's Challenges to the Unknown.
Yeah,
I was like,
and see,
on board.
I knew of Challengers, and I loved Challengers, and so once I started seeing those, I was like, oh, I know what kind of book this is, or what kind of character this was. And he never had his own series. He was in a couple like Brave and the Bold. They did a couple, and it just never. I mean, other people kind of
He was
like.
in the Forgotten Heroes for a while.
Yeah, he was like, come on, like he was in a group called the Forgotten Heroes, which is so like, guys, let's have a talk.
Even in the book,
You're
his
worth
whole
more
vibe
than
is
that.
so back page. Like, he's a working dad.
There was, when we were doing the Superman issue, they sent, because I was like, I want to go to that original issue and try to see if we can work at something cool, like I retell a part of that issue as the story that he tells. But when they met, it was one of those things where Superman was in trouble and someone went around collecting like all the Forgotten Heroes, and Cave didn't want to do anything. He was just like, leave me alone, which I loved, because the more we learned about this character, the more he lined up with what we had envisioned for the character. So it was great. Like, he's kind of like a jerk. Yeah, he didn't want to do anything. Lois had to have like a character with telekinesis, like a cartoon, like drag him through a wall and like bring him to go help her. And he's like, all right, I'll do this, and I'm leaving. I don't want to.
Well, then I'm out.
Yeah.
The Forgotten
I mean,
Heroes.
he still did it, but he was.
man.
There's
and
the
then,
team.
oh man.
Is that
Thank you,
Cave
Zach.
Carson with the helmet?
that's
Oh
him.
my God,
Yeah, it's him.
He is Dig Dug. Holy cow.
He's Dig Dug.
Yeah.
He looks like a Nintendo, like a
Angel and the Ape.
Dolphin.
Dolphin.
Oh my God.
It's not Angel and the Ape. It's
No, it's Dolphin and oh God, I couldn't see. Like,
bet.
There was a second story where they get a whole team together to help Superman. It was all those guys, right? The Forgotten Heroes. And so they get Cave Carson, and then the next issue is they go to help Superman. I read the whole thing. I had to read it 3 times. They forgot to put Cave in the second issue. I swear to God. I kept looking, and it was like, maybe he's like helping, like, maybe he's with this team, because it was one of those things like, okay, you guys go get the orb, and you guys flip the switch, and we'll go like blah, blah, blah. And so I read it, and I was like trying to, getting ready to write the issue, and I'm like, where the fuck? Like, where did Cave go? They had a whole story with him coming, and then they were just like, I don't know, okay.
He was like, you know what?
He went to
Screw you
get
guys.
coffee.
what happened?
Yeah. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know.
You could make it up.
In a future issue of Cave Carson as
Just
a cybernetic.
like a one shot where he's at the.
He's got coffee. They're taking forever. And he's just like, God, hurry up.
Everyone go.
I gotta save Superman.
He's like, where's everybody?
So,
I got muffins.
So we ended up having to come up with kind of like a new first story where they met, because I don't think they were in the same room
I
together.
love that he's a guy with a kind of okay Superman story. That's like basically his claim to
what's
fame.
great. Yeah, because Cave is a guy. So the way we approached it when we had our first conversations, we're like, this is a guy who was a kind of an adventurer. He kind of became like a little bit of a deal, maybe like 60s or 70s. And then it never really worked out for him, just like in real life. And so he just kind of like, he met somebody cool, he settled down, he's like, let me do something else. He had a kid. He tried to make like a series of films with his family as adventurers, with his then like 8-year-old daughter. She didn't want to do any of it. She got eaten by a giant worm, and she was like, that's it. He was totally negligent. And so he just went and kind of got a job working for the people he was working for originally, where he got the Mighty Mole. That's part of Cave's thing. He was like working on Mighty Mole and he stole it. Which we thought was so cool.
Yeah,
like this dude, and that was like one of those little things where you're like, there's something to this character. He's not just kind of like a science man, like rip-off character. Like he's got some personality to him that was already laid down. So, and we loved there was kind of a like a Zizou vibe to the team with the red and white uniforms that you saw up there. Well, that's kind of cool. And we're talking about that and a little bit of Life Aquatic, like Bill Murray's character in Life Aquatic. And I think some of that, like rubbed off a little bit. He's just kind of gruff and he's kind of seen it all. But it's cool because then now Chloe's with him and she's seeing a lot of stuff for the first time.
He's got that weird best gun-toting friend.
Best friends with Wild Dog, and
that was my question. Like, how did Wild Dog get it? Like, Challenges of the Unknown. Also, Wild Dog. He wears a hockey mask and he shoots guns.
Like, it was one of those things when I was originally working on the very core idea. I was like, this guy, and then like, okay, maybe he has a daughter. Okay, that's cool. She's like an adventurer too, and then Wild Dog. And then, because I love Wild Dog. I love Wild Dog.
Dude in a hockey mask is always.
I know very little about Wild Dog, and I love Wild Dog.
Yeah, they were both kind of like conspiracy.
Or what you were saying?
Oh yeah, we found that they were both kind of like conspiracy guys. Our theory is that they kind of met in like a chat room. So this is not in continuity yet. We have not, but like maybe that's kind of like it should be.
Totally should be. I want to see them meeting now.
And I love like the slight the left wing, right wing kind of interplay between them is so funny.
Like a libertarian, he's like a cartoon.
His whole comment about the grenade launcher made me laugh so hard. I burst out laughing in my tent when I was reading
Congressman?
it. Yeah, it's just like, do you have any idea how hard it is to get a grenade launcher? Think about how hard it is for me to get a grenade launcher next time you vote.
So you're in this situation.
I'm thinking about it. Believe me. He's just mowing people down.
Dog's not like, he's got to make it work. I think he probably he gets money from, I guess, the terrorist networks he kill, like that kind of thing. They always do that with vigilantes.
Sure.
But again, a grenade launcher is kind of like a big deal.
That's a big deal.
And he just can't.
Easy to do.
Yeah, he doesn't have like a guy working with him.
He's wearing a hockey mask, for God's sakes.
Yeah, he's a little low rent, and that's what we like about Wild Dog.
So, can I ask a selfish question? Are you guys fans of Venture Brothers? Does that because that's
for sure.
Love Venture Brothers.
Like that's my favorite show of all time. So like within 3 pages of this book, I was like, well, this will be my favorite book of all time.
Yeah, and it's funny because I didn't want to talk a lot about the Venture Brothers influence because Venture Brothers is still more like satire. But what's great about Venture Brothers is it starts as satire, but then it becomes its own thing. It's not. The strength of Venture Brothers is that it started as a Johnny Quest satire and then created its own world and its own characters that you actually care about, and there's like story, and that's probably its biggest influence on Cave
the Venture Brothers aren't even characters. They're barely characters in the show anymore. Like it's about the whole world around them.
Yeah, kind of like the Simpsons thing too, and it's great. It kind of works
so much.
You know?
But they share a DNA, as I think is that they come from the same DNA egg. It's just that Cave is less of an ironic take. There's no irony in Cave.
It's a very fun take.
Cave is a real guy who had to live through this and kind of like deal with the aftermath of being a science hero.
And it's like he's kind of over it, but he's kind of addicted to it too. Like I said, he tried to be famous, and it kind of didn't work. And now that he's kind of, unfortunately, we're meeting him at a very dark time in his life. His wife passed away and stuff like that, and now he's getting pulled into the thing. I think he's kind of trying not to have a good time, in a way. I see it like that.
Until the jelly, yes.
Yeah, until the night pudding. Yeah.
Now, I think a crucial element of the DNA, I think, that helps us make all these associations is where did Michael Avon Oeming come into the picture?
Oh my God.
He couldn't be more perfect.
Wow, yeah.
Well, I mean, Mike's a fantastic artist, and he's someone that I thought about because just because I love his work, I felt like he could do this really amazing adventure thing and have this kind of almost an animated quality to it and things like that. And he's kind of the master of this kind of, he can do this really crazy, trippy, disjointed storytelling and kind of make it all work. So
the car skidding around the side of a page to stop on a cliff in the center.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he tries really crazy stuff, and it's really fun. And
Nick is amazing too. They work great. They're such a great team.
So that's actually an interesting question because so many of these it feels like every single title in the Young Animal line has this element of psychedelia to it.
Yeah.
like how much of
Getting
the
the colorists.
yeah, like, but like just the layouts, the pen, like all of it, like how much of that comes from the writer versus how much of that is coming from the artist? I would imagine it's relative to every title, but like, can you guys speak to that?
It's coming from the basic starting point of what these books were going to be and what the whole line was going to be. And I felt like it was time for a really heavy dose of psychedelic energy. I felt like that's at least what I wanted. I didn't know if that's what the world needed or wanted, but I found if you look at like other dark times in the history of mankind, I find that the counterculture fights against that darkness, and sometimes it holds the hand of psychedelia, and they kind of, counterculture and psychedelia are kind of married.
Yeah.
So that really all started kind of from, in some ways, the beginning. Well, Cave a lot, and yeah, actually all of them.
You can't have madness and have it be boring.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's like, yeah.
Speaking of psychedelia,
Like, I know that Marley did a color palette thing for Kelly. Like she sort of set
Marley's
up
the
sort
artist,
of,
aren't she? The changing girl, and
Marley's
Kelly
that kind,
Fitzpatrick is
the colorist. And so they had kind of a conversation. And then another thing that Marley and I did that Kelly was in on as well was that we started a secret Pinterest, so that we started to have like when we were starting the book Shade, the Changing Girl, we had a visual vocabulary that we could sort of agree upon, like what sort of madness might look like, or what any image that we saw that might feel or look like madness. And so I think a lot of that sort of sprang from there, and I think Marley sort of came up with a sort of a color dictionary or something that then Kelly did. But then we would have lots of conversations. Like, I've certainly said at one point, Lepuck, the sexy panda boyfriend of Shade, he's like smoking a bowl with his band in his apartment, and Kelly had the smoke be gray, and I was like, we're in an alien world. Like, we can have the smoke be red, like it doesn't have to be. And so, but that was like the very beginning. And then once you say those things to a colorist, then they know how to like just sort of take that baton and run with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of just make the grass red.
Yeah.
When we go to a different, it works. It really works.
Yeah.
I think with Cave, the coloring, if you notice in the first issue, because we don't spend a lot of time above ground.
No.
Because Cave hates above ground. He hates it. And
His name is Cave.
Yeah. It's very drab, those scenes. Not super drab, but compared to what happens when they go in there. And I feel like that's the thing. Cave was like a kind of a straight scientist guy that kind of met this really cool woman, and he kind of loosened up. That's kind of between the two series. I always call it the 60s or 70s when we talk about the era, and that's when before they had Chloe, and they're kind of going on these weird psychedelic adventures. So those colors, that's Cave's world, and Chloe's kind of entering that, and I think that's how we show Cave's world. So these vibrant psychedelic, his
toxic
time.
green, toxic yellow, a lot of toxic color. Hits it. I always feel assaulted by it occasionally. In a good way of just like this environment is just so intense.
It makes your eye work.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was the colorists going off of maybe some of the energy in the original scripts, but then really owning it and running with it. Shelly had brought Tamara Bonvillain to my attention. I believe I had met her at ECC, and then I saw her work and I was like, this is perfect, and it was amazing. And she came in and the colorist really is the other artist on the book. They're really bringing it to life in a lot of ways. Yeah. Their work is all over it, shaping it and telling you, leading you where it's going through color. So we're all really lucky with the colorists at Young Animal.
And you don't use abstract images in Mother Panic.
Yeah, there's something that sort of goes back to some of the programming she was dealing with at Gather House. So she'll get these weird flashes while she's fighting, and they're always these strange abstract images in red and white. And when we saw some of the flashbacks from her childhood at Gather House, you got to see sort of where those colors and images came from a bit. But it's probably the most sort of grounded book compared to the others, and especially in terms of color palette, because we kind of know what Gotham looks like. So this was a way to sort of inject a little bit more of that psychedelia in it, I think.
And that's kind of part of what makes it a Young Animal book, even though it's a Gotham vigilante story.
Yeah.
We like your books a lot. Thank you.
Can you tell? So my introduction to the Young Animal books was Shade the Changing Girl. That was the first one I picked up because I was a huge fan of the original Shade the Changing Man back in the day.
And you mean the original reboot?
The original reboot of Shade the Changing Man. Yeah, the one that mattered to me. And this, I mean, like, I don't even know where to begin about what this book does for the sense of mental isolation and disassociation. Like, I spent the first 5 issues going, maybe it's not an alien and it's just somebody having an intense nervous breakdown that accessed weird powers. Like,
Briefly, what is the book about?
yeah, please, for people who...
Well, Shade the Changing Girl is about an alien from Meta who is a bird. She looks like a bird, and Meta is a very diverse alien world. And she is obsessed with this poet who had a madness vest and went to Earth, and she decides that she's going to go to Earth, and she possesses the body of a 16-year-old girl who was the biggest bully in her school. But the superpower that she has is madness, so everything is like going batshit crazy around her, and now she's in the body of this bully who everybody hated, and maybe her friends tried to kill her or didn't help her to live, and her parents
took a passive interest in her
her
breathing.
parents may or may not have been like okay with pulling the plug on her, and she was really bad, and now Loma is inside this body that she doesn't really know how to use, and she has to deal with the fallout and the consequences of this life that she never led. And she has a very particular viewpoint of what Earth is because of this poet that she liked, who is a poet and talks about Earth and stuff. But also there's this show that she loves called Life with Honey. That's an I Love Lucy kind of show. And sort of it happened to have bounced off the Earth and broadcast into space. So it's Earth's most popular show in outer space. And she thinks, Earth is going to be like that, but that's like 1955. And it's not 1955 anymore. So she doesn't really sort of understand what she's jumped into. And one of the problems for her is that the power that she has means that everything doesn't make any sense.
Anyway, yeah, it's such a there's such a disassociation, and it's so painful to watch in the best possible way of this poor creature bouncing through the universe, having.
Yeah, raise your hand if you're an alien fascinated by Earth culture.
Yeah, no. welcome to a table of us, and like I really did identify with her quite a bit.
Well, I think it's also really interesting because you're talking about someone who thinks that Earth is cool, humans are cool because she feels like they have more feelings than she does. So she's like, I could experience those. I'm gonna go. They have good feelings there on Earth.
It's almost like this weird astral drug of some sort. Like, I'm gonna go take this drug. I'm stuck in it.
And she's like,
she was, oh no.
Yeah,
oh no.
It's like it's a little bit more intense than she thinks, And the truth is that she actually was feeling. She's actually a feeling bird. So
the idea that sort of your fandoms have richer emotional lives than the one that you have.
And I think that it's also kind of an interesting way to sort of comment on what it means to be human because it's an alien who's inside, who's inside of
There's a part of me that's still not even convinced she really is an alien. There's a part of me that's still.
She's an alien.
No, it's in my head. You heard it here first. It's in my head though. Like in my head, I'm like, it's like, how much of this is just crazy?
You know what? You can read it however you want. That's the beauty of books.
Oh, I'm aware she's really an alien, but part of me is just like eventually you're just gonna pull the plug on the whole thing. Again, I watched The Holy Mountain this morning to prepare for this episode, and just go, the mountain isn't real. Go back to your life. I'm like, no.
All of these books are a dream you are having specifically.
No. Just wake up. Whack.
Don't wake up.
Yeah,
we like
them. A lot of stuff happens, but here's what we can say: she is a human now.
Yes.
Right?
She's. Bless her heart, she's trying.
She's trying really hard.
That band, when she goes to see the band, that was such a. The disappointment with reality was. So many of these issues make me cry a little bit from
I'm sorry, but thanks.
No, I love a good cry. It's
Yeah, it's funny what you were saying before about the monkeys, right? Because the sonic booms, that's sort of like the monkeys, the Beatles, whatever, that it was sort of taken from that kind of that era, and and that was another commentary on sort of fandom and how it's like when she goes to this show. I mean, she didn't really get that like it was 50, 40 years later, and so she's like, oh, those guys are old. They don't look the same,
No, I was having flashbacks from between like the monkeys to their weird evolution. They made a movie called Head, and very much that moment of like, oh, you guys have personalities and like a whole reality outside of this manufactured thing. That oh dear.
I think I used to watch the monkeys as like reruns on like Nickelodeon or something. I think of it, and they used to mix I think like parts of Head in, or they did like another documentary.
They did a weird.
So sometimes you think you were gonna watch like the goofy madcap antics of this band, and it would be like a real kind of weird serious episode, and it would just be out of order, total, just a syndication, and that always fascinated me.
Oh God, our poor audience, which is going to be digging this stuff.
Go listen to the monkeys and learn about the monkeys. You'll
Cecil, we have a question on our chat from Loma Shade.
Oh, good. Loma,
saying,
it's so nice to hear from you.
To Cecil, what about a Shade poetry chapbook as an add-on?
Oh.
Which I actually wanted to ask that, because like so much of the poetry in there was like, this is real. I actually really enjoy this poetry too. So I wanted to ask you about that. But
that's one of my favorite parts of the series too, is the poetry of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, and like the poetry gives it history and gives like, she's like loves this poet, and she's trying to kind of almost copy his life and walk in his footsteps. It's the same as like, I love Jack Kerouac, I'm gonna go hitchhike across America. Oh, this is very different from what he did, but I still love his poetry. So it feels very similar to something like that.
Someone, like when someone is like, or like everything that we love, like it becomes sort of the fabric of who we are, like as we grow older, and it's like all of those things that you always sort of like are pulling from. And so for me, that's what the poetry is for her. It's like Rackshade has a poem for every single thing that she's encountering on Earth, and like a phrase, it's like a line that she can like sort of kind of pull from. I like that idea though
A little bit of alien Dorothy Parker to sort of.
I like that idea too.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Loma Shade. You just assured a poetry book.
There's definitely something there. I don't know what it would be, but
something's there. There may be a really cool place for it.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said for like, it's really cool to have a character who's quoting someone from her home world, like this alien thing. She's got this idol that she like. Just the thought there's an alien society that has their own idols, and that humanity's not the only one that like idolizes celebrity and stuff like that. Like I thought that was really a really cool element to that book.
Thank you.
Really liked it a lot.
And I also feel like with the poetry stuff, I feel like to be human is to be a poem. Like we are all poems ourselves in our own lives. And so I feel like that just sort of sums up what it means to be human. And so putting poetry with Shade as she moves through this world that she's trying to understand, or this being that she's trying to understand, and I don't just mean being, but I mean being, that just, it was a natural sort of fit.
Were there any poets in particular that you were absorbing for this notion, or was this just all you being just
me? In my angst.
Wait, so you I will come back to this. You've all made fantastic Spotify playlists for your book.
Yeah. Wait, really?
Yes.
Oh man, now I'm gonna have to go read all of them again. Oh,
but if you had like an extended, like an equivalent Spotify playlist for like poetry or literary works or comics or music that inspired these books, like do you have any names off the top of your head? Going to his question of, are there particular poets who you draw from on that? Who's on your general culture playlist?
I would say book-wise, Walter Tevis's, and it's also a film, but The Man Who Fell to Earth. It's a book and a film, and I think we talked about that when Shade originally, when I was starting.
Yeah, it was one of the first things.
That is like, so I feel like that sort of existential loneliness and disconnect from the world. Like, in the movie you see that he's got aspirin, but there's not real words on it and stuff. That was like a real touchstone.
Yeah.
Nice. Anybody else have off the top of your head?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
For Mother Panic, especially for the stuff in her past, the anime shoujo Kakume Utena, which was on my Signal Boost, was actually a huge influence, and I've listened to those soundtracks like so much while writing, because it's just like the weirdness and it's like a world built on fairy tale tropes and surreal
chanting in the music.
Yeah, and just because there was sort of that weird, almost cult-like behavior at Gather House, and just that still influences her and feeds into her, as an adult. That's something that I've definitely like it actually influenced me more than I even realized, because there's a school or a school building that burns down in that series. So.
Oh man, it's been a while. I gotta dive back. I'm also supposed to mention really quickly that we are doing our 5-minute challenge at the end of the episode, just like always. Now that we're back. And back on a relatively normal Wednesday. So if you have a thing that you want to see us attempt to rant about for 5 minutes, please submit it in the chat, and we will pluck it from the chat, and put it into our little computer, and we will make a run.
We pitched, if our guests are agreeable to it, we might do minute free for all.
That's a frightening notion, yes. But more time to come up with a good idea, which is definitely a bonus. So. Yeah, please submit if you've got one. Anyway,
so cultural playlist.
Weymouth Burroughs.
Nice.
You know, I think that was a lot of kind of what went into the poetry of Doom Patrol. You know, so I just love his work.
Naked Lunch in particular, or something in general?
Yeah,
what's a good starting point for folks?
I think Naked Lunch. You know, just go right in the deep end. You know?
There's no preparing.
That's kind of how I wanted to treat readers with Doom Patrol. I just kind of push right in.
No, and that's exactly what it was. It was like, here's a Euro. What?
Yeah.
There's a universe in this thing? What is going on?
Yeah. Were you a reader of Doom Patrol? I've been wanting to ask. Were you of the previous?
No, we've had this conversation. I really want to read Doom Patrol, and
I was so curious.
But I love Gerard's, and now I've got to go read everything now.
So the book, because I know the book worked for me, but I had so much baggage coming into the book. I was curious how someone who didn't have any baggage coming.
Oh man, I fucking loved it. I fucking loved it. Yeah. So
there's a really important run of Doom Patrol that sometimes gets overlooked, is Rachel Pollack's run, and she did a lot of that with Ted McKeever. And I am told, I've heard that that's going to be reprinted in February, I think.
Oh, nice.
But I think that's common knowledge now. And I'm really excited because I got to go back and finish the run, and I loved it in a totally different way than Grant's run. She came right after Grant, and Richard Case was with her for a while too. And then Ted McKeever comes on. There's different artists kind of come in and out, but that is a mystical run.
It was a tough act to follow.
It's a tough act to follow, but I feel like she got a decent amount of issues in there. Yeah, it's amazing. So I'm excited because people will get to check out that run, which is a really important run in Doom Patrol's history.
I haven't read it since it was originally published. It's been a long time.
There's some runs I haven't gotten to read yet. But I'd like to think that over the years they'll all be available because there's something valid about all of them, you know.
It's hard to quantify to people what it is about this book other than it is the superhero team I went to high school with.
Yeah.
Like it's just all of this weird, sad damage of the people I loved in high school, of like just all of these really fabulous, talented, broken messes.
I kind of feel like it's just like I had said this at a signing a week ago. It's like a kind of a group of people that gets together for a party in Manhattan or something, and they all kind of forget to go home, and like the sun comes up and they just go to work, and then they do it again at night, and they never go to sleep. And I kind of feel a little bit that's some of the energy I'm trying to put into Doom Patrol.
I feel like you just described Burning Man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, and to be fair, it was the perfect book to like. All of these were like, I was like, this is exactly what I want my Burning Man experience to be.
When I saw you reading them, and like you were like every once in a while, like because you were outside of our tent a lot, and like you would just like start giggling. I'd be like, come on, I didn't bring my tablet. I can't sit down and read with you.
In the desert, man.
But you would start giggling and be like, I cannot wait for our show on Wednesday.
I'd be like running to people in our fake living room out in the desert, being like next to our Velociraptor, going like, look at this, look at this. So
we had a fortune-telling Velociraptor. It's a whole thing.
Nice.
Yeah, like you do.
Sounds like a young animal comic book.
It was the perfect place to read a young animal book. It made me really happy, and I irritated so many people that we were actually no,
entertained.
So there's a shot in Shade. Actually, it was so fun where like she's watching something on the computer. There's like I'm trying to remember what video is on the screen, but like it's a Mike Diva video, and Diva was like. He was like, "It's my show.
Yeah.
She's watching my show."
That's Marley put that in there.
Diva, So Diva was with us.
Oh my God, that's so great.
And he was just giggling so much. He's like, Shade. So, yeah, it was a weird, wonderfully meta. I love these books so much. I'm going to be giggling. And the Doom Patrol, I was so worried that like one day I'd wake up and Crazy Jane would be in spandex.
Oh, yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Oh, in this one?
No, not New York, but like someday.
Oh, eventually? And you know
somehow.
what? She probably will.
She probably will.
And that'll
I'll
be
okay.
somebody else's vision
be okay
for
with
it.
it.
And maybe you'll be okay with it, because maybe you, by then, maybe maybe we'll make tights weird again.
It'll somehow maybe
we'll
it'll be
all
great.
have tights next year.
Yeah.
And it'll be weirder than other people in tights.
She'll have a new personality that will be really into tights.
We've seen a little bit of the like trying to force them into flashback versions of themselves. What led to
love
the
that
one shot with the
issue.
Allreds?
That was a story that I had really just been wanting to tell, and it was like the perfect point to have Mike Allred and Laura Allred come in and just kind of do this thing. And I wanted it to progress the story, but at the same time, I was like, I didn't even really realize I was doing it, but I was kind of making a commentary in some ways about how like toxic the Silver Age also was.
Yeah.
But it was still a modern Silver Age story, but it definitely, I think at times at least, addressed some of the toxic things in there, like the science gone mad and the reckless behavior.
That character, I'm blanking on his name because my brain is.
chief?
Yeah, the chief is. I mean,
Niles
like
Calder.
Niles is such a sad, broken.
Yeah.
He's so desperate to be an authority, and so
Yeah.
like he's such a desire to be respected, and and watching you break him with a ball peen hammer was so.
It's a fun issue.
Yeah. I've been waiting a decade for it.
I kind of want to write more of those.
Oh, I love your
love
one-page
Niles.
things like what's
yeah.
happening with Niles Calder.
Oh,
Like just the pacing of the book, the structure of it. Like it'd be like, this is fun. What
he wants to be a DM, and he's so bad at it.
Yeah, he is bad at
He's
it.
the worst dungeon master
He's
ever.
like incredibly bad at it. Catastrophically bad.
It's
So
so.
you sat down to be like, I'm gonna do Doom Patrol, and you hit on all of these like standalone stories and like interesting backup coloring pages. Like how did you answer these questions of like, what will you do with Doom Patrol?
How did I answer those questions of what I would do with it? It just I spent a lot of time like thinking and taking handwritten notes, like
Is this
months.
the exact book you've been planning for 20 years, or is it a surprise?
I think it's better because it grew as I changed and grew as a person. It kind of grew with me. One of the things I made sure I wanted to do, even though I had written an issue, or not an issue, I'd written about 6-7 pages of Doom Patrol script that would become this, that has different characters. And I'm glad I didn't write that one because it was a very cynical version, and this I feel is the opposite of that.
I would
And
say
so
so.
this is the version that reflects who I am now as a writer.
I was surprised and delighted. Can we talk about Casey?
Yeah, sure.
Man, I was
Usually-
right there. I was right there.
Yeah.
Space case.
When I
Wow.
show up for weird stuff, I'm used to sort of bracing myself for cynicism at the same time because it's so common for outsiders to see through the bullshit of the world that you get a lot of sort of disenchantment. So it was sort of this amazing surprise to first jump into your book and be like, oh, this is not that.
Yeah.
Why?
Because again, along with the psychedelia, I feel like it was a note that people needed to hear. Like I felt like it was missing,
There's like a lack of cynicism,
Yeah.
lack of like smarmy.
That makes me so
People
happy.
needed to
That's
hear.
what they needed to hear,
I love it.
He's dead.
No, it's the Doom Patrol that we need. I'm really like it. Really makes me happy. No, and Space Case is such a great addition to the canon. Everything you've done with Danny,
Yeah, and that's the
with
important
Danny
thing.
Hayden.
It may not be what you want,
what
but
we
it's
need.
what you need.
It is.
Because I know that
what we
had a
need.
big event happen today in issue 8
excited
that I'm
because I
sure
took
we're
it
going
home,
to
but I
get
haven't read
questions
it yet.
about, but I would keep in
I
mind.
love the lotion cover. The lotion cover's right
There, it's
there.
right here.
If you really like lotion, it's a big issue.
I love
for
lotion.
So,
Lotion the cat is my jam.
but I would keep that in mind when you read Doom Patrol. It is, may not be what you want, but it could be what you need.
I will admit, I know that your answer is going to be no comment, but man, I have been waiting patiently for the return of the Brotherhood of Dada.
Oh yeah.
For so.
Yeah.
The quiz was like I have such a love and affection for the quiz.
Yeah.
And man, I was writing fanfic about some of those about Sleepwalker. Like it's bad.
And in a lot of ways, this Doom Patrol is a fan fiction.
I get it.
I think a lot of comics are fan fiction, even the published ones.
For good or ill.
Because you'll even see letters written by the author that would eventually take over the comic, would write a letter to the comic complaining about something 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then
You
there's
see that with like Doctor Who's, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like Capaldi, right?
David
Yeah.
Tennant, huge.
Yeah.
And Stephen Moffat.
We're several generations in now, so it's you have people that have grown up with these characters. you know.
Weird echoing conversation, and all. I mean, like I kind of want to find. Are they going to reprint any of the classic Cave Carson?
I think there was like some kind of talk for like a minute. I'm not sure what they're going to do with those because it's it's like more like stories spread throughout several different series. I would love it because it was honestly it was even hard to like track down research for us.
We have to make a lot of it up.
And that's the thing, because I'm always looking for it, because I want to mine a little more from his past now, and
Well done. I see what you did there.
the puns. I love writing Hope You Dig It
I
on
remember
books.
when we had started on it, and I had said something like, "We need a Cave Carson expert." I was like, "There's got to be someone on the internet that knows everything about Cave Carson." And then I don't think we could find it.
To be fair, they're way underground.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out. Get out.
Fuck you.
Yeah, we were definitely mentioned needing an expert.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
John, did you have an answer to the cultural playlist?
Yeah, dude.
Book
I
film?
have a great one. You know, like honestly, by proxy stuff like H.G. Wells. Like not like don't go out and start. I mean, well, please do read H.G. Wells. Yeah, that's great. Don't not go. Yeah, please read everything and stuff like that. Or Michael Crichton. There's kind of like science. But you know, H.G. Wells. It's funny because like his writing influenced a lot of stuff. I think probably because the movie rights were cheap. And like the '70s, like Amicus, and like if you've heard of like what are Hammer Horror?
Yeah.
So their contemporaries were Amicus. They were two studios churning out all those Peter Cushing vampire but they did a lot of great stuff too, like The People Time Forgot, The Land that Time Forgot.
We were talking about Quatermass a couple weeks ago. Quatermass in the
is
Pit.
great. There's I want to say it's called like something for the center of the earth. Yeah, it's like all those like kind of adventure things from the 60s and 70s. That influenced a lot of the look of Cave and a lot of the kind of vibe. And then like as we spoke before, a little bit like the Wes Anderson, like stuff, Venture Brothers, but like Johnny Quest, like that kind of stuff. Yeah, those are Tintin was always that was one of the first comics I ever read, and I love that sense of adventure. So it's something that I keep, and as with everything I do, I always love stuff like Tank Girl was like that's my number one. Yeah. So always trying to throw.
Actually, my next thing, your ways in. So we got Tintin and we got Tank Girl. Like,
do it.
what were the things that got you into comics?
Did you want? Yeah. I had an older friend. Like it was like 3 years older, but when you're like 8 and someone's 11, it's like they're the coolest person.
Yeah.
So his name was Brian Medina, and he got me into like the Punisher and like X-Men and stuff like that. And then so superheroes, Ninja Turtles. I love the cartoon because I was little, but we were on vacation in Florida. My dad bought me the original like collections of the original comics,
Sure.
and I was like, yeah, no, I'll take this because way darker than the cartoons. And things like, I told a story, I think a couple months ago, something where, you know, my library had 2 comics. It had Craven's Last Hunt and had Mouse. So I read Craven's Last Hunt first. It was fun, superhero, great story. But Mouse, you know, I read when I was about like 10, and I think it helped form a healthy opinion of comics that they could really be anything. And then once I was like 13, 14, like teenager, like kind of not growing out of superhero comics, but maybe reading less. I had a great woman who ran our local comic store, and she would sometimes get stuff that she thought we would like and wouldn't really pressure us to get it. She got me Flex Mentallo by Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. And that was pretty much the end. I think that year I got into Tank Girl because of the movie, and then Kill Your Boyfriend and Flex Mentallo. Those 3, all other aspirations went out the door. And I was like, comics are real. I liked drawing them, but I was like, whoa, they're really cool. This is pretty geek culture.
Oh, no, I feel like Kill Your Boyfriend would fit really well into Young Animal in this day and age. Like I feel like that would be. I feel like it would sit well with this.
I came very close to Kill Your Boyfriend reference regarding Chloe's jerk boyfriend from the first 2 issues. But yeah, I think that's what set me on my path. That's when I decided, you know what? I was like 16. I'm like, maybe art school. I met Gerard, and that's literally how I got into comics. So,
For me, I liked Batman, you know, because I was watching Adam West when I was little, and so my parents saw that Batman was my boyfriend, and so they got me this this omnibus of 1940s Batman and Supermans, and so that was like one of the first things that I was reading, and then we're French, so Tintin, Asterix, Lucky Luke, all that, and then I had a little brother, and I always considered my little brother's bookshelf was like the extension of my bookshelf, you know, and so he had a pull list, and so I read a lot of stuff, but then. So comics were always like a part of my life and my growing up, and you know, and just fell more and more in love with them. And then when I got to college, I was in Montreal, and Drawn and Quarterly was starting up, and I worked at a vegetarian co-op cafe. And where I was the waitress, and we would have these bande dessinées en direct, which were live comic jams, and we would have people come to the cafe, and I would be the waitress, and it would be like Seth and Julie Doucette and like everybody that you can think of from that time in Drawn and Quarterly, and I'm blanking on everyone's name right now, and they'd all be there. And they would just draw, and so comics became this like new sort of part of my life. So it was like, you know, Dirty Plot and everything that was coming out on you know, Seth stuff, Yummy Fur, Love and Rockets, which I also love, Naughty Bits, like just all this stuff. And it was like, and I was also, that was when I was in my first band, so it was like this real marriage again between sort of comics and you know, and music, because to me they were like kind of, they were sort of married at the same time, and then I became poor, so I stopped really, you know, collecting comics or anything like that because it was just sort of not affordable. But I knew that it was always something that I wanted to do and that I wanted to write. So I write young adult novels as well besides comic books, and I wrote a book called Boy Proof about a girl who's obsessed with Vertigo comics and post-apocalyptic science fiction film. And Shelly had read that book. But before that, what had happened was that one day I bought Ed Brubaker's The Dead Enders. And I looked at it and I was like, because I really wanted to write young adult fiction. And I was like, oh, The Dead Enders, this is the vibe that I want to do. I want to do a book like this. That's what I want to do. And then Shelly, she had read Boy Proof, and she called me and was like, hello, my name is Shelly and I am at Vertigo. But I used to Google how to submit a comic book to Vertigo, and I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, well, I guess I'm never going to do that. I guess that's a career that I think I'd like, but it's never going to happen. And then she called me and was like, would you be? I was like, yes, I have 5 ideas. Also, I really like this book, The Dead Enders. And she was like, I edited The Dead Enders. And then that was kind of like, okay, you're in, you know. But yeah, it was like this very long journey. But it was something that I'd always known, like from the time I fell in love with Batman, it was something that I knew I wanted to be a part of my life because I wanted to tell stories. And so, yeah, that was that. Yeah.
Wow. No, yeah, I'm like that.
Do you listen to music a lot when you read comics? Because I think we were talking earlier about the correlation between the two.
Oh, I make a playlist for every single book I'm writing. Like, I make a playlist that immediately because writing is hard, yo. And like, I get into, like, I don't want to write. And so if I make a playlist that is like of the vibe of the character that I'm writing, then like I can put it on and immediately like, all right, I'm back in here, you know? So, yeah.
What was your weigh-in?
So funny enough, exactly 25 years ago today, they aired On Leather Wings in prime time.
Yes, they did.
Technically, the premiere of Batman the Animated Series was 25 years ago yesterday, but I missed that it was on Saturday morning because they were advertising about the big prime time premiere. So I watched that, and I'd been a fan of Batman 66 too. But at this point, I think I was like looking for something like darker and more serious. So I was like, oh, I have a new Batman. This is my new Batman. So I ended up getting the Batman Adventures comic, which was the tie-in for the animated series. And the first issue I bought because it had, I bought because it had Batgirl on the cover, and she wasn't in the animated series yet. And they actually scribbled out Batman's name and wrote Batgirl. And I loved her from Batman 66, and since she wasn't in the cartoon, I'm like, well, I'm gonna get this and read it.
Was
and they
that Batman Adventures number 12?
Yep, which I cannot.
The first appearance of Harley Quinn?
The first comic appearance of Harley Quinn, which is why I can't afford to replace my childhood copy, because they sell for like thousands of dollars now. But yeah, and it's funny because they did bring her into the animated series later on with a totally different origin story, because this issue had the classic origin story where she's like, I'm going to a costume party, I'm going to dress up like Batman. Oh no, crime's happening. I'm really going to be a hero now. Except in this version, crime was Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, and then Catwoman shows up, so it was like, we're going to throw all the female characters who were awesome into this one issue. So, so then I started buying it more regularly, and a couple of months after that, Mad Love came out, which was an Eisner-winning one-shot that was the origin story of Harley Quinn, which is super, super. Oh yeah, there's that issue. Yeah. And that was sort of the issue that showed me how deep comic book storytelling could go, because it's just like a really tragic, awful.
It's heavy.
Yeah, I mean, she almost dies in that issue, and it's. Yeah, that was, I'm like, comics are cool. So then I just kept reading. I worked in a comic book store in college, and then like later on I did their website. And then when I moved out to LA, because I'd gotten my MFA in creative writing with a focus on screenwriting, I started doing webcomics because, you know, everyone out here is writing screenplays and stuff. So I wanted to have something online I could just point people to that I was updating regularly and be like, look, I'm writing things, I have a work ethic, yay. And then some friends started posting links on Twitter about comic anthologies they were pitching to, so I sort of jumped on those. Because I went to grad school and they had classes in everything except comics, which they do now, taught by one of my classmates. And I was like, well, I feel like I learned everything else and studied everything else, but I don't know how to write a comic. I want to do that on my own. So I was just starting to explore that a little bit. And then one of the anthologies I worked on very early on was Woman Anthology, which blew up into this whole thing and was my first published story. And then it all just sort of went from there.
Some Fiona Staples person. You know, it was okay.
I'll have to Google her. I'll figure out what that is. I'll Google that. Yeah.
What was your win?
My way in? I mean, you know, just.
We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, I did spend some time, like, what? So when I was in art school, I was instructed under this editor at DC, Joey Cavalieri, and who I love, and he took me on as the intern at DC. So I spent a good year there, understanding how editorial worked. I was the one photocopying the comic pages that came in to shrink them down and staple them so all the editors could read the progress. And I would just drop them off at every editor's desk. And it was super cool. I got to really see how comics were made in that way, because a lot of, I think it was in some ways, a lot of it was pre-digital. I think digital was just starting. I think they had 2 desks that were digital and to do cleanup work. Maybe, you know, but they still did that stuff analog. So anyway, then like I said, I was doing toy design for a bit, and then when I went back on the road, I really found, or when I went in the band and on the road, I found that I really missed comics, and so I realized that was like a really big part of me, and that I needed to kind of come back to that, and so, you know. Umbrella Academy became the first graphic novel that I was, like, the first thing I ever, like, finished as an adult. That became that. And
I'm kind of curious, it's not our subject for today, but, like, I love Umbrella Academy. I love Fabio and Gabriel a lot. How did that come about? How did you cross that barrier of, like, how did you find him? How did the...
you know, Scott Alley found him, and he said, I have 2 brothers, Gabriel Ba, Fabio Moon. And he goes, take a look at both of them. And I was like, wow, I love both of them, you know? There was this really strange comic, too. It wasn't anything even slightly mainstream. It was called Rock and Roll. It was this book they put together, and it was heavily art directed and designed. And at first it was like, maybe we have one of the brothers does the flashbacks, one of the brothers does the present day stuff, and over a while I was like, I don't know if we want to disjoint it that much, even though their art does go very beautifully together. We decided to stick with one, and we said, okay, for this kind of thing, we think Gabrielle is the best fit for this. And so it was through Scott, and then I met Gabrielle, and we met at a convention. We met at San Diego. It might have been my first San Diego, and it was very cool.
Is there a convention down there?
Yeah, they have one. They have a little one. And then that was it. And we just started together. I was very late with the first script. You know, it was very late, like months. I'm sure I'm sure there was some nonsense going on. I'm sure I was like in another country or something. But
You guys
You might have been.
we were touring a lot. We were touring a lot.
First time you ever
I was
showed
going to
me
say, how very
about it.
Grant Morrison of you.
I
God knows where he
finished-
is. God knows where the script is coming from.
I was in New Zealand when I finished issue 6 of Apocalypse Suite, and I'd done almost the whole comic, and I quit Warcraft in order to write Umbrella Academy.
Bless you.
I was really.
Comics saved your life. I remember
did.
the Warcraft.
They did. It wasn't just me either. It was like the whole band, except for Frank. He wasn't into it. He tried it once. He didn't get it.
It takes trauma to
he
stop
was
playing
the
World of
smart
Warcraft.
one. He didn't play, but everybody else, Bob, Ray, Mikey, myself.
That was my approach.
What
I
did you
never
play?
started.
I played
yeah.
an undead, a lady undead fighter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. And a lot of Warcraft.
It was around the time, because the first time you talked to me about Umbrella Academy, I think we were in like Connecticut, and it was when I first came out the first, like it was the Revenge tour.
Yeah, it was Revenge.
And we were
yeah.
sitting at some table, and you were like, "So I'm kind of working on this thing," and we started talking, because like I said, we met in art school, we worked on comics, like,
Nice.
yeah, you got so pumped about it, like, I forget.
But you remember there was a lot of Warcraft going on.
There was a lot of
like
Warcraft
we were playing
going on.
backstage.
Yeah, because my brothers were like, "Yo, you tour with a rock band? Like, what's that like?" I'm like, a lot of clicking, a lot of silence, and a lot of clicking, a lot of Diet Coke.
That was
That's
like,
Yeah.
grades.
That's
when you're
really
like on
what
a
it
bus,
was.
like
You want to know what kind of crazy
really
shit
what it
goes
was.
on backstage?
Well, we'd figure it out because you get to like an arena, and then the first order of business, like Bob was always really good about this. He'd be like, "We need strong internet." And he would do like whatever it took. Like sometimes we had wires going from way like another end of an arena all the way to where we were, so he could plug a router in.
That's the most horrifying land party I've ever heard of.
We got another band addicted to it who we brought on tour.
What other band?
It's a band called Thrice.
Oh my God.
And Dustin, I remember he was leveling up one night, and he had to run and put his in-ears in and go on stage and throw a guitar in and start playing a live show. Like that second. Like he was still clicking, and he had to run.
people in his group are like, where
And
did
I
that
was
guy
like,
go?
what
we
did
need
we
him.
do? What did we do to these guys?
Supposed to be tanking.
And that's when I started to see, like, I was like, oh man, this is taking up too much of my life.
Yeah.
Like,
It can be a problem.
yeah.
I'm reveling in this right now because I think Geek and Sundry basically wouldn't exist if Felicia Day hadn't gotten hooked on World of Warcraft.
Right.
So I'm loving that it's just the path to art.
know,
It's getting really
Warcraft,
distracting.
Because we've all agreed to like stop playing for a while. It's the only reason we can function. Is we were all like, well, we'll just play Overwatch and everything will be okay.
Yeah. Overwatch
Night Elf
lesson.
Druid.
Oh yeah, it's only
That's
10 minutes
accurate.
of your life for Overwatch. Oh man, yeah, that's that makes me so happy.
It's bad. It's like grabbing the things that you love and trying to focus them and make something new out of them. Like that's what she did with Warcraft. She made something really positive out of it. I remember the Guild was coming out. That was like, it was really inspiring just seeing how grassroots it was and you know, kind of the early days of like
Internet
original
video when
web,
they're
kind of
like,
like
"Can
a
this work?"
show on the
The
computer.
salad days.
Yeah.
The salad days.
Yeah.
So we're at the end. Speaking of making things out in the world, we're a year in now.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, Shade 12 came out today.
I'm at number
We're
12.
not so young animals.
I'm so excited to read it.
I'm a preteen.
Adolescent animal.
Yeah, we're adolescent animal now.
You're 12. Your book is about to be a teenager. What are the teen years gonna be like? What's year 2?
There was that announcement at San Diego Comic-Con.
Which one?
The event in January.
Oh yeah, there's an event in January. I still don't know how much we're allowed to talk about it, but it is a cross.
right?
Yeah,
It's only the internet now.
it is a crossover event that involves DCU characters and Young Animal characters, and it's very different, as you would expect from Young Animal. It's very different than a lot of other crossovers. Like it has some very different things happening in it, and some good commentary, and they're trippy. But we're gonna see all the books continue. Some of them in slightly different forms. Actually, really all of them.
I know we haven't talked much about Bug, but Bug was also like a really good, is a fun read that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I should talk about Bug more. Bug is fantastic. Like the thing that hooked me into Bug was the enthusiasm that the entire Allred family had for that character, and they're literally just making it up like they were playing with toys.
Oh.
And it's I've just read, I just approved an issue that just had me dying laughing. Like, just some amazing stuff. Using these really old characters and making you care about them, and it's a fantastic book.
And they keep the Kirby vibe strong.
Yeah.
Like, it's really got that Kirby energy, but it still feels really like a wonderfully modern take on it. And it's
So
definitely.
what's Bug?
Oh boy!
For those of you who don't know.
For those of you who don't know, so Bug is basically, if you go into like the weird order of the new gods and the old, basically Bug is sort of this. He's basically a manifestation deity of like the new gods, except he was sort of raised in the pits of the old gods as this creature that's less than human, which they call bugs, which they sort of use as sort of like I'm like meshing it up a bit, but like
You're doing better than I would.
okay, he's sort of this like treated as this lower class life form, and basically he had some adventure back in the '60s, which I haven't read, but that they sort of flash back to, where the Justice League trying to go, no, you're not a bug, you're a man, and he for a moment gets to have that moment of being like a real entity of light and like living up to his godhood, and then like gets crushed as bugs are supposed to be, and then wakes up in a basement with a creepy girl and a talking teddy bear, and everything's wrong.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I love it.
And yeah, it's if you like ecstatic, it's got a lot of the same energy and excite. It's got a real, again, like it's that pop '60s vibe. I feel like this is like just a whole. It's got that pop psychedelic energy that I love, and a little bit of that humorous but uncomfortable horror, like almost an that Evil Dead 2 vibe, where in the right light it's really funny, but if you're alone at night, it's going to give you nightmares.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah,
Love it.
I love stuff like that kind of complexity to
Yes.
Evil Dead 2. Like, that's something that I at least try to take into stuff like Cave, where you could be laughing or like freaked out a minute later. You know, I love not knowing what's going to happen.
All of these books, this is something I love about all of these books, the way you read them changes depending on where you are. The room that you're in changes how these books are read on this very fundamental level. And like, I really had that experience because I've doubled and triple read some of these books at this point. And like, whether or not I'm in a cafe, whether or not I'm home late at night, whether I'm in the desert in a really uncomfortable environment, has really changed what I'm getting out of it. And I'm getting that same, like, again, and I'll keep coming back to things like Jodorowsky books and films, or like those things that I watch or read over and over again, because I know every time, as Beetlejuice says, it keeps getting funnier every single time I read it. I'm really digging that these books have that thing where it's not just revisiting a great memory, but it's just finding a whole new layer of the gem every time I turn, and how I relate to them. I love these books so much.
That's
Nice.
true.
Thank you. I just got like all like.
So now that that's over with, Enigma and Kid Eternity, man, what's up? So where are they? now I've buttered you up. You don't have to say anything. Kid Eternity.
We were
Enigma.
actually, I'm glad you brought that up though. We did have a talk in the beginning about like how much old Vertigo we going to bring in.
Yeah.
And it was Dan who really helped me find that balance, and especially because I was over the course of 4 days I would pitch him comics, and if we started to get a sense of like, all right, so we're going to do Doom, and from the first meeting we knew it was going to be Doom, we knew it was going to be some form of shade. We didn't quite know, although I think I had made a note that she should be in the body of a teenage bully, and then I was like, all right, well, what next? And then I was kind of like Animal Man, or because that's a big Vertigo one. And he was like, let's do something different. Like, let's take a character that Vertigo kind of maybe wouldn't have. And that's where Cave came from.
Sure.
And then I pitched him on the idea of a new character, and he was really excited about that. And so it was a bit different. Like, we are approaching it from a different angle than.
Those are the only two Vertigo books I can really think of that I feel really still vibrate on this level. Like,
Yeah.
Vertigo also, like, sort of, I don't want to say lost its brand, but sort of branded into just sort of what you want to read, as opposed like there was.
Well, there became so many wonderful originals. So you
that's
get
where they went.
Fables,
Yeah.
you
Fables
get
and
Why the
then-
Last Man, you get like a preacher,
Open
these
it
new
open.
universes.
Where this is still so tight and compact, and it's such a laser,
Yeah.
like the way that very early Vertigo was, just such a laser into one reality.
And and because Vertigo had grown into this really successful creator-owned type situation where you're starting to get like originals and things like that, because of that, it felt silly to take DC characters and bring them back to Vertigo. It felt like they did have to go somewhere else because Vertigo was so different, So we've definitely borrowed a lot of their DNA and saw how we could do it differently.
Yeah, those are my two. Yeah, that's my two. I used to throw a Wasteland out at the Vertigo panel. So like when you're bringing Wasteland back, and they would just be like, "What is wrong with you?" No. So I guess like unless we have some questions from the audience, because I feel like we've been kind of ignoring. I feel really bad for ignoring
We're being
the
very
chat room.
selfish. We're doing all our questions.
Well, what kind of questions do you want?
I don't know. Like, excite
Let's
us.
see
Shout
here.
one out.
Now, this is skim chat. How's chat doing?
Chat's great. Right?
Good. Excellent.
Hi guys, we haven't forgotten about you. It's really good to see
my
you.
wife is in the chat talking with everyone right now.
Hey, Brittany.
Bless your wife.
We're apparently going to Disneyland tonight.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah. She just decided to surprise me with that. Yay, we're going to Disneyland.
Cool. Little jelly.
You should be. It's going to be amazing.
God damn it.
I was there yesterday.
Oh, how was it? Is it still okay?
It was really nice and empty because I think all the kids had gone to school, and so it was like,
Right.
I mean, I just have to say,
all the kids
Peter
are not back
Pan, which I
from
never get to go on because that line is always like 75 minutes long.
Yeah,
it was
it's so long. Why is it so long?
It was 25 minutes. I got to do Peter Pan.
So for those of you who
That's
don't know, that never happens, and the Peter Pan ride is amazing because you're flying in a pirate ship
Yep.
over
Over
London.
Yep.
Over London.
I love
It's
it.
great. And it's like old London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. So,
While we're waiting on questions to come in, let's
I was
actually
hoping
talk
that- yeah,
about
Let's bust that
a
out.
couple other things, like this lovely one that we have on the table, and I'll hope to get some exciting
Old
upcoming
school.
and recent stuff from all of you. But what's this?
So that's my new graphic novel. It's a graphic novel called Soupy Leaves Home, and it's a historical fiction. And it's about a girl who dresses up as a boy and runs away from home and rides the rails with the hobos in 1932.
Oh, you have
It's
me
great.
so sold.
Oh wow, yeah.
Like
this book. I got
20s,
to
30s
read,
hobo
yeah.
culture is fascinating. Like
Yeah.
the signs they would leave on. Can I?
There's
Can
a,
I?
It's hers,
there's-
so
yeah,
no.
Can I keep
Yeah,
this?
you can keep
No.
it. There's
Will
a,
you sign it for me
yeah,
later?
There's all in the back. There's all the hobo signs. There's a dictionary, the visual dictionary of the hobo signs. And, yeah.
I'm gonna marry this book
Not
now.
only did you just take her book, but you're getting her to sign it.
Yeah.
You are a dark
Can
lord.
I steal this and will you sign it for me as I thieve it from you? Thank you. This is like unironically, I love hobo culture, and I've always thought like if I ever had a time to sit down and write a comic, I would try to figure out a 20s hobo tale.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
This is, I think you will be very satisfied, sir, with this
Well, I'll say
hobo
you'll be
comic.
satisfied, sir. Satisfied as I say satisfied.
I
Oh my
say.
God. Yeah, you got the hobo signs back here?
Yeah.
Oh. I'm so in love with you,
One of my
Cecil.
favorite books that you've heard me talk on the show about before, which was Plain Jane's and
Yeah.
Jane's in Love.
Oh.
Yes,
Oh
the
my
Plain
God.
Janes, which is illustrated by Jim Rugg. Yeah.
I
yeah,
love it.
See?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Look at all that
Yeah.
hobo code. Look at all that
And
hobo
if you
Yeah,
go
we did.
through the book,
great.
like on all the fences in the buildings, like
Really?
they're on the they're all stealth in there, and
Can I steal this idea and write my own book?
yeah.
And
The internet, Matt.
So while you're reading this tonight, I'll be going to Disneyland with your wife then. This is exciting. Thanks,
Yeah,
Brittany.
yes.
Thank you all.
All right, I do have a question here. Let me hold on. I just lost it because of the hobo. Aromia Flies question everyone: who is your favorite young animal?
Wait, what? What's
Who's your favorite young
Like a
animal?
baby duck.
Like, yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
I'm gonna interpret it that way.
Yeah.
That's how I'll
Let's interpret it that way.
Kitten, Fiona the hippo.
Oh.
Favorite young animal.
The Pawpaw Bears.
I
Sloths.
saw a baby stingray.
Baby
and
sloths?
they have like, it looks like they have little feet. It looks like they're dancing.
Oh, they're very adorable.
Yeah, that's the new fave. Is this baby stingray?
Baby
Okay.
stingray. All right.
Probably a baby hamster.
After they grow
Maybe a
their
little
fur.
bit.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Couple days.
No, the original form.
No, I had some accidental baby hamsters, and when I saw it, I'm like, is there some kind of worm in there?
Right.
Yeah, there was.
Did you just say you had some accidental baby hamsters?
Yes.
As you do.
You just had a couple hamsters and then oops, more hamsters?
Yeah, they were supposed to be two girls.
They breed,
They were not two
they breed
girls.
like rabbits, to be fair.
Poles are cute.
Yeah.
I like baby porcupines are really cute.
those are cute.
They're adorable.
Baby sloths and baby bulldogs. I'll melt for both.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I melted both. Why?
Awesome question. Thank you.
Why did you
like all
decide to
baby
call it Young Animals? That's from Half Fairing Circus.
Yeah.
I just like the way it sounded. I thought it sounded cool. And
I mean, it does sound cool, to be fair.
Yeah, and I wasn't working on a solo album, but I was supposed to be at the time, and I was going to call that Young Animal, and then I decided not to do the record, so I did this instead, and I just used the name of it and just moved it over.
Nice.
The original, the young animal with the Euro sandwich. The Euro sandwich was really like the moment I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting.
That was fun
That
to
was
do.
such a great juxtaposition.
All right, so let me do this because I had Devin categorize all the questions per title. So I'm going to go through and find a question for each of you for your title.
All right,
Great.
First one, Doom Patrol. How would you describe Doom Patrol to someone who has never heard about it?
Oh man.
Right, good call.
And that is from Eva A7X. Thank you, Eva.
You know, just the basic version of them still rings true. It's the world's strangest superheroes, and I feel like they are battling the world's strangest things. Not necessarily always villains. It could be concepts. It could be sentences. You know, just depending on what they are dealing with that week. So.
There was stuff other people would fight if they could wrap their head around it.
Yeah.
There was a whole old issue in the Morrison run where they were fighting the color green. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, because of the
Yeah. It's like, right, I'm bringing that back.
Let's see. Let's go to Mother Panic. This is from J.A. Penrose. Do you see Mother Panic as a mirror of Batman in any way? Perhaps a darker reflection of Batman?
I mean, I think part of the approach we took with Violet was like, what if Batman never existed? What if there was the concept of a really rich person who's also a vigilante in Gotham? It never happened. And what would that character look like in 2016? So I think a lot of it was sort of like looking at Batman and some of the things that just don't really work in his identity in a modern age if you were making a new character, like the whole like pretending to drink champagne and stuff, because everyone has cell phones now. Like they'll notice he's like dumping it in a plant or something. So Violet's like actually has like maybe some substance abuse issues, and like when she goes to a party and she's doing stuff, she's actually doing it. And you know, same thing, like, you know, she doesn't like take men or women home and then just like, oh, I fell asleep, you know, like Bruce does. No, she actually like does have flings with people. So we were sort of, I know Gerard, it was really important. He said when we were first talking to sort of bring in like the whole idea of celebrity in the modern age and paparazzi and social media and just how that influences how we see people, and have her be like a very modern celebrity type, for the famous for being famous type.
Who runs her social media?
I don't.
We had
she
long
hasn't-
talks about her social media.
Yeah, she actually hasn't really done much during this run. I think she like just is more like a figure flitting through everyone else's social media.
Yeah. I think she's too cool for it.
Yeah.
She doesn't know how to use it. She's locked out. She's drunk. I don't know. There's like a million reasons.
She probably like downloaded Snapchat, looked at this, and was like, "What the fuck?" Yeah.
Boy, I feel that one.
Let's see. Shade the Changing Girl, Cecil. Let's see. From True Hearts, what is the inspiration behind the character? Like when you're writing for her, like where's that inspiration coming from?
I often feel like an alien in situations where, you know, I don't know how to be in a room sometimes, and I feel awkward, and so I feel like that's part of what it is. But also, I did a lot of thinking about how when we're teenagers, we don't really have control over our bodies yet. You know, we're sort of going through these growth spurts. Every feeling that you have is like the first time you fall in love, first time you're betrayed, first time that you have rage, all of those kinds of things. So I think those two kinds of things, my own awkwardness and also having been a teenager, and sort of, I feel like teenagers are aliens. So those are the two inspirations that I use for Loma in Megan's body.
Cybernetic Eye. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
This comes from Night C322. Can you elevator pitch your book?
Oh,
Elevator pitch.
Elevator pitch.
Yeah. Cave has a cybernetic eye.
Yeah, Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye. That's the elevator pitch.
That was how I pitched it to Dan DiDio.
Yeah.
What's that?
I didn't have to give him anything but that. I was like, I want to do one more book. He was like, what? And I said, Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye. He's like, awesome.
Just on the title?
I swear to you. On
my
the
God,
title.
yeah.
On the title.
But what's
I think that what's that?
I said, how could you not greenlight that title?
I think I got the imprint because of coming up with that title. I'm fairly certain that's when it really came together.
where they were
And
like,
Young
this is what
Animals
Gerard is
born.
up to. We're game for that.
I think so, yeah.
It's such a good title.
It's a great title because it immediately is like, well, what the fuck is going on with this?
Yeah.
He has a cybernetic eye, and who's Cave Carson? And
I would say the elevator pitch is that a retired superhero who moved on. has recently suffered the loss of his wife, and now he's stuck with his estranged daughter. And some of the things from his past are setting him on a new adventure that's going to force him to spend some time with his daughter on the family trip from hell and possibly to hell.
To the journey of the sinner.
It does have a little bit of National Lampoon's Vacation.
Little bit.
Just
No,
a
but
hint.
it's all,
Just a hint. It's there.
Yeah.
All right, this is for everyone. This comes from Miss Sunflower 94. If your book got a movie or Netflix adaptation, do you have any casting in your head for the main characters?
Yes. I don't know the actor, but he plays Beric Dondarrion on Game of Thrones. With the eye patch, especially with the eye patch.
The flaming sword.
Mike Omi first called out that actor about 5 months ago from another role, and I think on Game of Thrones we just saw him like in the last 2 episodes, when they're out in the snow, and he just looks super grizzled, and he's just perfect. I can't think of anyone else except for that actor now. He's great.
Yeah, he's
I would
great.
love him. Yeah.
That's so cool that like you've lived with this character now for a year and a half, 2 years, however long, and you're like, no, now I finally see him. Like see him in a way I can't unsee.
When I saw that episode, I was like, that's Cave. Yeah.
The first person that jumped into my mind, so that's who I'll say, is Elle Fanning.
Oh.
I think she'd be
great.
She's got some good acting chops too, so I think maybe she just need to not be so thin. She could heft out a little bit. Curve up a little and then
But you could do the flashbacks and the new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the one that I always say, which is kind of cheating, is like Charlize Theron, but like when she was like in her like late 20s or early 30s, because Violet is tall. She's like 6 feet. And she's just like, she's sort of like a powerhouse, but you also need someone who can do a lot of that vulnerability too. So like basically I need the next Charlize Theron to show up and we'll cast her.
I always feel weird because I work in so much casting, so I always have like a dozen ideas, but they're all actors no one has ever heard of. They haven't done anything yet.
That's who we need.
I know. We've got her.
I know that there's been moments where I was talking to Nick Darrington, who's the amazing artist on the series, about Emma Stone, and she came up
For Space Case?
For Space Case, yes. Yeah, because there's even been periods where they've had the same haircut and stuff like that. So I think she would be fun as that. She does a good positive. She's very good as positive and as not positive. So.
I could totally see her doing
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
She's along for whatever crazy ride is happening, but she's kind of always grounded. So to have her be like, I don't know, I went to prom and there were aliens. That's just what life is like.
Right.
Who would you want to voice Danny, the street?
Well,
Danny Land.
that's interesting because, when I went to, Danny the Street is based off one or two, I believe one, really famous comedians that would do this routine where they spoke in Polare, which is kind of, I guess it's like kind of a slang. It's like, I believe it's like a gay British slang that they would use over there. Kind of like identify each other, just have this network, and I could be totally messing that all up. But
what's the greeting that they keep doing in the book?
Bona Tavata, yeah,
love it.
And Morrissey has a song. My earliest exposure to Polare was on a Morrissey album. He has a song called Piccadilly Polare, and there's times where he's Polare and what he's done. So I knew about it from that. But I asked Grant about Danny, and he said, no, it's something in Sandy. There's these two comedians, and they have a bit, and they use Polare with each other. He's like, that's Danny. He was like, tell me. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I think, and you could listen to some of these old recordings on YouTube, and you hear them, and you're like, oh, that's what Grant heard in his head when he was writing Danny. So
now I have to go look that up because like Danny, you've talked about Danny the Street with me before off the air, and on air,
and on the air.
But then like reading Doom Patrol, I was like, oh my god, I think Danny the Street, Danny Land might be like my favorite character in comics ever.
Yeah,
like,
Danny Land is.
All right, we've got 10 minutes left. We have to do our 5-minute topic.
We do.
Do we have a winning topic?
We have a winning topic.
Okay.
It comes from Miss Sunflower 94.
Thank you, Miss Sunflower.
The universe gives you the superpower that is least useful to your personality or lifestyle. What is it? Now, Do you guys want to opt out of this? Do you want?
This is
I already know what
interesting.
it is because I have a real thing. I have a mutation. I have a genetic mutation where I can eat a lot of cheese because I fat, like lipids
Wait,
and
wait,
fat.
don't go yet. Don't go yet. Don't go yet.
You're gonna start.
I went.
So, go ahead. No, we've got to intro this because it's got to have to sit. It's got to have to sit.
Okay,
So
you do it,
explain.
you do it.
So our topic is. Welcome to the Wednesday Club. Our 5-minute topic is.
The universe gives you the superpower that is least useful to your personality lifestyle. What is it? This is from Miss Sunflower 94. Go ahead and start, Cecil. You go.
Okay. I have a genetic mutation where I can eat a lot of fat and my spike does not go up for my cholesterol, so I can eat a lot of cheese and it has no effect on me. That is the most useless superpower that a person can have. I actually have it. And so yeah, cheese eating.
Do you like cheese?
I fucking love cheese.
Okay, so it's great.
Yeah.
Like that
But
would
I
be
don't
awful
think
for
it
my
actually
wife.
helps anybody else.
But it doesn't help anyone. But that would be awful for my wife because she hates cheese. It would be like I can eat all the cheese I want, but if I hate cheese.
But I just sort of feel like a superpower should be helpful in some
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
All right.
Probably the ability to grow even larger. I think I've reached max usefulness to height. It already takes 4 minutes to get into a car. I'm good.
You don't want to be taking out the top doorways?
Yeah. It's no. Sorry, giant man. Not interested. Maybe shrink down a little bit. I have similar power. I can eat like unlimited chili. So if I'm ever stuck, see in my lifestyle, I could be lost in a pool of chili.
Shade and Cave, chili and cheese.
Shade and Cave is our vaudeville comedy act that will be
Cave
premiering
and
soon.
shade and cave.
Yeah. So if I ever fall into a vat of chili, I'm gonna be totally fine.
I'm into every part of this. All right, useless superpower.
A useless superpower. I don't know if it's not useless, but it's not something that I desire or need, and that's the like super speed or something. I'm in no hurry to get anywhere. You know.
And you're very punctual as
I'm
is.
punctual because I leave early.
Yeah.
I don't need to rush to get there. I used to have this old rule back in the band days where I'm not running to catch an airplane.
Yeah.
We should be there early enough. I will not run to the gate and stress myself out. So I am the opposite of a man of action. I am a man of inaction. And
Deliberate speed.
yes, slow and steady.
Have you missed a
I'll
lot
get
of
there.
planes?
No, because I always take the early ride over to the airport.
What if you're in the studio and there's no more coffee and the coffee's in the house? You would cheat.
Yeah, just one. Yeah, I would go to the house to get coffee. That's different.
just for
That's
your own-
something that cancels
yeah.
stuff out.
Yeah.
Like I'd get in the car and go to the store if we didn't have coffee.
Yeah.
You know, and that's insane for me. Like,
Jody Houser, what would be useless to you?
I think like Hank McCoy, like super science brain, because I was actually always better at math and science than writing in school. Like I always got way better grades in math, but I just like I had no interest in it. I would sleep through class because I could still do okay in it. Because I knew from like age 8 I wanted to be a writer. So like.
You're like, these equations aren't making anyone cry.
I
Need a
mean,
new field.
yeah. Except I'd probably be like, oh, at least I have this knowledge to like write this like cool realistic science fiction thing. So I guess maybe I could use it in that sense, but in the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna make great scientific discoveries. I'd be like, no, let me finish these 15 comics first.
I didn't plan ahead.
Internet saying Amy Dallen?
Well, funny thing is, if I would be a person on whom your cheese eating gift is wasted because I dislike cheese. I like every other milk product, but it would be totally useless. I'd be like, great, more cheese. I think mine would probably be like something physical. It would just not apply to any of the challenges of my life if I were just incredibly strong.
yeah.
Breaking your phone.
Yeah, that's for sure.
7th phone today.
Everything around me, like, and you know, I already have the problem of always trying to go everywhere with like 7 different bags, but strength wouldn't help with that. I would be equally clumsy, but much stronger, and that would just be no good.
It'd be 15 bags, and it's just you would have trouble walking through doors
Yeah,
at that
super
point.
strength would be totally wasted on me. I would just break everything.
That's fair. I thought about this, and I think it would be the power of knowing the proper noun for anything and anybody, of just knowing what actor was in what the name of the film was, who directed it.
That would
like
be
just knowing the
useless to
proper. It would, because I hang out specifically with people who already have that, because I can contain none of that information, and I've gotten by somehow on ignorance and charm, and I don't really want to I don't want to fuck that up.
Okay.
I feel like that would throw the entire thing. If I actually had to know things as opposed to just appearing like I knew things, that would ruin me.
All right, 30 seconds, Mackie.
Mine is actually relatively easy. I would, if I had the power of a blowfish where like spikes would come out of me and everything, like that would be the most useless thing in the world to me because I'm actually like a very loving, touchy-feely person. So like, if like touching someone made me like impale them, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be like, I can't talk to you without touching you. I'm gonna kill you. Like that would be absolutely useless to me.
I know your next Burning Man outfit that I'm going to help you make. It's going to be so exciting.
By the way, this is
People will die.
dynamic characters.
I guess maybe my cheese one is
Imagine if you had the gift
useful.
of cheese,
I just feel like
you
it's
can eat it.
useless to everyone else.
No, it's just a thing like you wouldn't even tell people at parties at that point.
We're done.
Oh my God, we're out.
Everyone, this has been the Wednesday Club 5-minute topic. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch us on the Facebook, or not on the Facebook, on Geek and Sundry's Twitch channel.
Or on Project Alpha.
Or on Project Alpha. And these have been the writers from Young Animal with us here today.
Cecil
Thank you
Castellucci, Jon
all.
Rivera, Gerard Way, Jody Houser, Amy Dallen, Taliesin Jaffe, Matt Key.
Wow,
can't do
Amy, you're
that.
very good at this. Wow, that's your superpower.
Thanks for covering my proper
Come watch us. We're every Wednesday night at 7 on Geek and Sundry's Twitch.
Yay!
Thank you.
That's the end of our 5
All right,
minutes.
we've got We've got 4 minutes left, and we need to start wrapping it up.
I suppose. Well, no. Go ahead if you've got something good. Like my only thing is like if you wanted to send somebody to some of your old work or something that you're particularly proud of that you feel is like a really good representation of the work you do, what would be something that they wouldn't necessarily immediately know? It may not be your biggest hit, but something that like you feel like speaks
Like you're
to you.
in love with, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, like you love all your children equally, but secretly you undermine most of them except for one. So like, what's the one that like? It's what my parents did. So.
I'm going to say The Year of the Beasts. The Year of Beasts is it's a novel. It's a hybrid novel, so it's alternating chapters of prose and graphic novel. And you can read the book just the prose, and you get one story. You can read the comics, and you get another story. But if you read it together, you get the whole story. And it's illustrated by Nate Powell, who did the March trilogy with Representative John Lewis. It's gorgeous, and it's like a quiet book that nobody knows about, and that is the book that I would say. Year of the Beasts.
Fantastic.
That would be my first graphic novel, Heartbreak. It was a series that we did that we collected into a graphic novel that was definitely the more common way to find it. I self-published it, so if you find a copy, it was in my father's basement at some point. But no, it was a series of stories that I made with a gentleman named Nick DeStefano. He was my roommate in college, so we wrote and drew our own stories, and they were true tales of dating and kind of the adventure you go on trying to find love. Like there's stories about me going to Norway because I fell in love with an exchange student. There's stuff like that, and it was cool because it was my first comic out of art school, and it wasn't like a superhero book. It's just about people and relationships, and I think a lot of the stuff I learned in writing a book with like no action and just having to do with kind of feelings, relationships, and mixing humor into some sometimes dark material. A lot of that stuff carried over into what you'll see in Cave Carson. So check it out. It's on Lulu.com is where you can get it now, and I think we're gonna re-release it like in the next probably year or so, hopefully.
We're
gonna have the 10-year anniversary edition will be out before the 15-year anniversary, I'm sure. Yeah.
2 minutes left.
I designed a Spider-Man doll that they released, and he wears a safari outfit, and he has a pith helmet and a cravat. That's a deep cut. If you could find that on eBay.
Wait. Okay. So question.
It's a Toy Biz. No, it wasn't quite Spider Craven.
It was a Toy Biz release,
Yes, it was a doll sized, because Toy Biz had too many of this doll. And they didn't know what to do with them, so I had to come up with. I was one of many people,
Safari
I'm sure.
Spider-Man?
Came up with different.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, you.
So
you
excited.
Should, yeah, find that. It's. I think I saw it on eBay real cheap. Like.
1 minute left, Jody.
Well, for me, it's easy. It's the CMYK story that we did a whole episode reading through here. And I guess also Faith. Faith was my first ongoing, so that's sort of me learning how to write a comic. If you want to see me hopefully get better.
You make it look easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's.
All right. Well, we've got to sign off.
You all make it look easy. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
For your wonderful joining us.
Thank you.
This has been an absolute delight. Same time next year. Tell us about year 3.
Sounds great. I'm here for today. Let's do it.
Let's all meet back here in 10 years, and we'll see how we've grown.
Yeah. I can't make it until 8 o'clock, though. I've got something on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, for Matt Key, Taliesin Jaffe, Amy Dallen, the writers of
the
Young
Wednesday
Animal.
Club.
Thank you so much for watching Wednesday Club.
What's coming up next?
Next we have Shield of Tomorrow is back. Our Star Trek RPG with Eric Campbell also returned from the desert. May or may not be the same man who went into it. I'm not sure how that works.
He's changed dramatically.
So stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
See you Thursday.